नमस्कार। आज हम स्टेट ऑफ इकोनॉमी पे बात करेंगे। भारत में जो लेटेस्ट जीडीपी के आंकड़े आए हैं वो काफ़ी उत्साहजनक आए हैं, 8.2% फॉर क्वार्टर 2, और ये माना जा रहा है कि इस पूरे वर्ष के लिए भी अब जीडीपी अनुमानों में रेट जो उनको बढ़ाया गया है। इट इज़ नॉट ओनली हमारे रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, हालांकि जो इंटरनेशनल रेटिंग एजेंसीज़ है वहाँ से भी अब ये देखने को मिल रहा है कि इंडिया की जीडीपी ग्रोथ जो है वो बेटर हो सकती है फ्रॉम द एस्टिमेट्स दैट वे प्रेडिक्टेड बिफोर द बिगिनिंग ऑफ दिस फाइनेंशियल ईयर। तो इसी पे हम बातचीत करेंगे कि इंडिया की स्टेट ऑफ इकोनॉमी क्या है। अगर टैरिफ्स के बीच यूएस से टैरिफ का समझौता होता है तो क्या होता है, नहीं होता है तो कितना असर पड़ सकता है, रुपी जो काफ़ी वीक हो रहा है, जो 90 के ऊपर चला गया है, उसका इम्पैक्ट क्या पड़ सकता है, इस सब पे हम विस्तार से चर्चा करेंगे। बहुत ही खास मेहमान हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं, मिस्टर प्रसन्नजीत के बसु। ही इज़ एन इंडिपेंडेंट इकोनॉमिस्ट एंड नोन नेम who tracks global economies also very closely, and उनसे हम बातचीत करेंगे और जानेंगे कि हमारा भारत जो है इस समय कहाँ पे है विज़ द अदर इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज़, एंड ग्लोबल मैप में हम कहाँ स्टैंड करते हैं। बासु सर, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है कार्यक्रम में।
नमस्कार।
बासु सर, ये बताइए कि 8.2% जीडीपी ग्रोथ इन क्वार्टर 2, आप सरप्राइज हुए या फिर आपको उम्मीद थी?
बिल्कुल सरप्राइज नहीं हुए। मेरा जो फोरकास्ट, आपसे भी बातचीत हुई है कि मेरा फोरकास्ट था इस साल के लिए 8.5%। इसका वजह यह है कि पिछले साल अगर आप देखें, पिछले साल सिर्फ 6.5% ग्रोथ हुआ था। तो 6.5% मेरे ख्याल में इज द बॉटम, इज द ट्रॉफ ऑफ द नॉर्मल ग्रोथ रेंज फॉर इंडिया। अगर आप देखिए पिछले 4.5 सालों में एवरेज एनुअल जीडीपी ग्रोथ हैज बीन 8.2%। तो वी हैव नाउ रिटर्न टू नॉर्म। पिछले तीनों जो क्वार्टर्स में हम देखे हैं 7.4, 7.8 और 8.2 is a gradual return to the norm of the trend. In my view, the trend rate of growth now for the Indian economy is a little over 8%. The actual average growth of the last 4.5 years is 8.2%. तो इसमें हम वापस आए हैं। अच्छा, और इस साल किसके वजह से हम इतने हमारे जो इम्प्रूवमेंट हो रहा है ग्रोथ में, तीन वजह है। एक है कि आप देखें कि इस साल के जो बजट थी उस पे all income tax rates were cut. So there's going to be a boost to private consumption as a result of that. और एक चीज है कि in the calendar year so far, including the latest move at the beginning of this month, interest rates, the policy interest rate, repo rate, has been cut by 125 basis points. So this is also going to provide a boost to domestic demand. Third factor, of course, is the GST cuts. Now, the GST cuts have only just come into play. तो GST cuts के जो influence है वो पिछले क्वार्टर के ग्रोथ पे ज़्यादा कुछ they didn't give much help because the GST cuts were announced at the beginning of September. They only came to effect on the 22nd of September. So most of the impact will occur over the next 12 months. So October 2025 to September 2026, we are going to get the benefit of a further GST reduction. The GST reduction was an effective reduction of 2 percentage points on average for all goods and services. Now, if you get a 2% reduction in the rate of taxation, indirect taxation, it reduces prices across the board. And that benefit is going to be substantial. It'll provide a substantial boost to private consumption over the next year. So, plus I think with GST rates coming down, inflation is also coming down. Inflation in the latest month is 0.25%. The RBI is still forecasting 2% inflation for the full year. In June, the RBI's forecast for this year's inflation was 3.7%. It is now 2%. I think even this is too high. We are actually going to see less than that. We're going to see less inflation. Inflation is going to be averaging around 1.5% over the next 12 months. And therefore, there is the scope for the RBI to cut rates further.
Okay.
The RBI will be cutting rates substantially further, or at least another 50 basis points early in the next calendar year.
Okay.
And as a result, we'll get a further boost. And therefore, I am looking at 8.5% real GDP growth in the current fiscal year, 8.2% real GDP growth in the next fiscal year. Now, 8.2 is partly because the base effects start hurting you in the second half of the next fiscal year.
Correct.
But otherwise, the growth momentum is strong. Now, you alluded to the US situation. Now, अगर US के साथ समझौता होता हमारा, then our trade पे, then I think we would have had 9 to 9.5% growth.
Okay.
10% growth even, because we now even have the very important labor market reforms being notified.
Correct.
The labor market reforms are notified at the end of November.
Right.
They will provide a very substantial medium-term boost to growth. And that medium-term boost to growth is going to come from labor-intensive manufacturing for export. Now, unfortunately, the United States is the world's largest market for imports. So if we are subject to a 50% tariff on our textiles, garments, shoes, toys, etc., then we lose a very important market for those products. And that is a shame. If we had some, अगर अमेरिका के साथ, मार्किन युक्त राष्ट्र के साथ हमारे कोई समझौता होता, तो हमारे बहुत, that would have been a very beneficial thing, especially now that the labor market reforms are in place. So, इसके वजह से हमारे, we would have got another 1.5 percentage point boost to growth, which is now not going to occur. But दूसरे markets हैं, जैसे कि यूरोपियन यूनियन, यूके के साथ समझौता हो चुका है, एफटीए हो चुका है, साइन हो चुका है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, यूएई, आसियान नेशंस के साथ हमारे पुरानी समझौता हैं. तो we have trade agreements, FTAs, in place with a lot of our important trading partners, which will now come into force and which will now have some impact on our ability to export those labor-intensive products to them. But of course, the absence of the US is very significant. Agar 50% tariff rate ho, then it's impossible for Indian exporters of those products to compete. It is simply impossible. It is, exporters anywhere are operating in a highly competitive market where margins are thin, where cost differentials between us and our competitors are not that great. So if you have to pay a higher tariff, we suffer. There's no doubt.
सर, अगर आप ये कहते हैं कि हम इस साल में यानी कि FY26 में 8.5 के दर से जीडीपी बढ़ेगी हमारी, तो हमारी प्राइवेट केपेक्स, और आपने डिमांड की भी बात करी, जो कट्स हुए हैं जीएसटी स्लैब में या इनकम टैक्स में, उसका कुछ ना कुछ तो बेनिफिट आना शुरू हो जाएगा. इनकम टैक्स का तो आना चाहिए, लेकिन प्राइवेट केपेक्स इज़ नॉट स्टिल पिकिंग अप. अब हम बहुत समय से बात कर रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग पे ही अभी चल रहे हैं. गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग भी थोड़ा बहुत स्लो हो गई है पिछले कुछ महीनों में, लेकिन प्राइवेट केपेक्स इज स्टिल मिसिंग. अगर डिमांड इतनी अच्छी है तो वो पैसा क्यों नहीं लगा रहे, एक्सपैंड क्यों नहीं कर रहे?
Private capex is picking up. In the latest quarter, growth was over 7%. So there is a pickup in private capex. If you look at things like the major corporates, the Tata Group has committed a substantial amount to capex over the next few years. Reliance Industries is committing massively. The Adani Group is committing massively. So you've actually got the major corporates committing to substantial investment spending. And of course, the public sector, government is continuing its capex drive. The first quarter of the fiscal year, there was a slowdown, but it's picked up in the second. So I don't see any a real problem. The significant factor is that going forward, with interest rates coming down, you'll get a further boost to capex spending, simply because the Indian economy is dynamic and is seeing good growth. Now, the other aspect is that if you look at foreign direct investment, just in the last 3 days, we have had massive commitments by Microsoft, $17.5 billion commitment. Google, Amazon, they're all committing massively, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence, because India is seen as a very important market for that. And therefore, we're seeing a really big boost in investment spending by significant multinationals. And apart from the fact that we're seeing domestic large corporates also investing. So I don't see any reason to be too worried about private capex not picking up.
So what is your take on rupee? अगर हम रुपए को विज़ाविज़ डॉलर देखें, डॉलर की वीकनेस के बावजूद इंडियन रुपी भी वीक हो रहा है. इट्स बियॉन्ड 90 टुडे. कितना और कमज़ोर हो सकता है और अब इससे कमज़ोर होने क्यों दे रहे हैं?
First of all, the dollar is not weak. I don't know who is the dollar weak against. The dollar it has strengthened sharply against the Japanese yen and the Korean won. So if you look just in the last 6 months, the yen and the won have depreciated more than 8% in 6 months against the US dollar. The rupee against the dollar has depreciated only 6% in the last 12 months. Now, that to me is nothing to be too concerned about.
Okay.
There were some periods over the last 3 or 4 years during which the rupee actually appreciated. For instance, in the year 2021, the rupee appreciated against the dollar. So there are some periods of appreciation, but in general, the rupee depreciates over time, partly because India wants to stay competitive. It is simply an unfortunate truth that India's exports of goods in particular have not become super competitive. We've not had very rapid productivity growth in our export basket. And therefore, the rupee has to depreciate over time. It depreciates over time. But 6% depreciation in 1 year is nothing to worry that much about.
Okay.
Especially at a time when you have no inflation. If inflation is near zero, then it makes sense to allow the rupee to depreciate a bit more, especially now that we face a 50% tariff in the world's largest export market. So we've got some depreciation. That 6% depreciation over the last 12 months is helping our exporters a little bit. They're providing them a little bit of a cushion against the impact of those massive US tariffs. That's about it. Now, if you look back, in the year 2011, the rupee depreciated 15% within a 6-month period. Okay. In 2013, again, it depreciated 15%, nearly 15%, in a short 6-month period. Now, those are crisis points. Then you have to take aggressive action to stop the rupee depreciating. This time, I think the rupee's depreciation is almost policy determined. So if you look at the foreign exchange reserves, they're more or less stable. Between May and November, foreign exchange reserves are around $690 billion. So it's not as if we are panicking and losing reserves, trying to defend the currency. No, we're allowing modest depreciation because we need to keep our goods exporters competitive, and actually even services exporters. In the era of artificial intelligence, there are fears that even services exports might suffer, and so it is important to keep them competitive. If we get a burst of investment spending in labor-intensive manufacturing that makes us very competitive in those areas, and we also have some sort of trade deal finally sorted out with the United States, then we could possibly see a stable or stronger rupee. But for now, with inflation low, there is no real problem with a modest, steady depreciation of the rupee.
What are the chances of this US-India trade deal going through soon? Because
It doesn't look good at all. Unfortunately, President Trump is unhappy with India, and not only is he unhappy with India, it seems that the MAGA, his whole ecosystem of supporters, has turned against India and Indians. So in this environment, I think it's quite difficult to see a trade deal being done, and we're not the only ones. I mean, President Trump is unhappy with most of Europe, Western Europe in particular. He's unhappy with many others. At the moment, he seems happy with China and Pakistan, which is not a very good situation for us. He has basically flipped completely from Trump 1.0. He seems to be happy with Pakistan in particular.
Yes.
He seems quite happy with China. He's trying to appease China. Just 2 days ago, he allowed exports of H200, almost the highest quality chips by NVIDIA, which are used in artificial intelligence, and graphical user interfaces. He has allowed those semiconductors, high end, to be exported to China for the payment of a fee of 25%. But the point is, he's removed the export controls. Correct. So at the moment, it seems that he is appeasing China, and that is not really good news for us. We have to operate on the assumption that it's unlikely that we'll get a trade deal with the US anytime soon.
सर, जो जीएसटी स्लैब रेट में बदलाव हुआ है, इनकम टैक्स में बदलाव हुआ है, उसका आप कुछ इम्पैक्ट फिस्कल डेफिसिट या फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन पे देखते हैं आते हुए? क्या जो सरकार की किताबें हैं उसमें कुछ असर पड़ सकता है?
बिल्कुल नहीं। मुझे भी लग रहा था कि कोई असर पड़ सके, क्योंकि there was a very substantial reduction in income tax rates. Plus, there was a reduction in GST. So I'm looking carefully. I look at the 12-month moving average of the fiscal deficit. And for a few months in April to August, there was a deterioration. The 12-month moving average of the fiscal deficit was running at around 5.1% of GDP. But over the last 2 months, we've seen a substantial recovery. In fact, the key to the recovery is two things. Corporate tax revenue to the government had been weak in calendar year 2024 and in most of FY2025, that is the fiscal year ending in March 25. Until February, it was still weak. But in March, there was a strong recovery. Okay. And since March, the corporate tax revenue has been strong. So corporate tax revenue has recovered. The trough in terms of personal income tax revenue was July. In August, September, October, there's been a strong recovery. So both personal and corporate tax revenues are now recovering. Okay. As a result, my measure, the 12-month moving average of the fiscal deficit, is running at 4.6% of GDP, which is just marginally above the target for this year. So I think this year's target could well be achieved. If it is missed, it'll be missed by a very small margin, which is surprising. If you think that the Indian economy is only going to grow 7.3%, like the RBI is saying. But if you agree with my forecast, 8.5% real GDP growth, then there'll be no problem. I mean, when you have strong GDP growth, you get strong tax revenue growth. And that is basically what is contributing to keeping the fiscal deficit on target.
Sir, सोना और चांदी में क्या करना है? Why is it there's a rush for gold and silver?
I cannot understand. I don't know why my fellow compatriots are so crazy about gold in particular, and now even silver. Frankly, the perception is that there's global uncertainty, so you must have gold. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
But sir, people are talking about de-dollarization and linking it to gold. Is that proper?
No, there is no. I mean, you see, now the point is that the Fed has just cut rates overnight, and there was a very difficult FOMC meeting. There were 3 dissidents who voted against, etc. So this is highly unusual. The Fed, the US monetary environment is going through churn. While it's going through churn, I think no matter who is appointed the next Fed chair, I don't think the US Fed is going to completely debase the US dollar. So there is legitimate fear that there'll be some dollar debasement, but I don't think it'll be drastic. And so these fears are overdone. You know, inflation in the US is at 3%. It is not as if inflation has run away completely. Despite the big tariff hikes that have already occurred, inflation is 3%. Now, it is not 2%, but nor was it 2% at any time in the last 4 years. And so we were closer to 2% about 5-6 months ago than we are now. But 3% is not a dangerous level of inflation for the US. And so if inflation does pick up, if it gets up to 3.5-4%, then I think the Fed will take countervailing action. Any central bank will. And I don't think any Trump appointee is going to be a complete hack.
Okay, so what is expected of budget this time?
I think the budget will continue the same pattern. We will continue to see benefits in terms of some forms of fiscal stimulus. Now, that's much less required if the economy is growing at the sort of pace that I'm looking at. Even if it is growing only 7.3%, there's not much more need for fiscal stimulus. So what you're going to get, I think, is more reform. And to me, my wish list, it's not what the government necessarily will do. My wish list would involve privatization playing a more important role now.
Okay.
So the likes of IDBI, etc., that were supposed to have been privatized, sold to strategic buyers, etc. I think those deals will start getting done.
Okay.
And we should see a significant boost to privatization over the next year.
Okay.
Because that is the main way in which the government can continue to improve its finances as well as improving the efficiency of the overall economy.
Basu, sir, you said, my last question, but you said the 50 basis points cut more from RBI. But if we are growing at 8.2, 8.5%, why do we need those cuts?
Well, a central bank has targets, right? The RBI's target is for inflation to be in the 2 to 6% range. The official inflation target is 4%. If you have 4% as the inflation target with a cushion of 2 percentage points on either side, and your inflation rate is 0.25%, should you not be cutting rates? You cannot say that, oh, we already have good growth, so we can afford to have very low inflation. Deflation is not a good thing.
Okay.
And you can derail the growth path if you enter into deflation. Now, I don't think that we will have deflation, broadly speaking, but the point is that you do not want to have inflation that is much below the 2 to 6% target range.
Okay.
Just as you don't want to have inflation that is above the 6% target range, you don't want it to be substantially below 2%. So if you have inflation at 0.25, I think inflation is going to stay below 1% for the next few months. Okay. Now, vegetable prices are going to start, month on month, vegetable prices have already started rising. Year on year, vegetable inflation will turn positive around February, March. Okay. So that factor will actually push up inflation, no doubt. But it is not going to push up inflation that much, because if you look at all the other elements of the inflation basket, everything is stabilized at around 2%.
Okay.
So if you have 2% inflation with very little cereal inflation, now just remember that the food grain harvest, the Kharif harvest has been spectacular. There are estimates of about an 8% increase in rice and wheat output. Now, if you get this kind of very strong harvest, as we've already probably had, then you're going to see further downward pressure on food grain prices.
True.
Of course, food grain prices are also determined by things like the MSP, etc., and maybe the MSP will be raised. So it's possible that we won't get that much of an impact. But if you have a very strong harvest and you've got good Rabi sowings resulting in another good Rabi crop as well, there's no reason for inflation to be picking up very much above the 2% mark. Okay. And therefore, the RBI will be obliged to cut rates.
बासु सर बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आज प्रोग्राम में शामिल होने के लिए. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर योर टाइम सर.